Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Wargaming, and today we are going to be doing another upgrade tier ranking review for Star Wars Legion. And today we are going to be looking at the command upgrade slot that you often see appear, well, on your commanders. And while this upgrade isn't quite as rare as something like the Force upgrade, it is one of the more rare upgrades out there, and has a pretty eclectic variety of options that function in a variety of ways to benefit either your army or your hero themselves. But as always, this is going to act as a sort of living document that will be updated as time goes on and more cards are introduced, alongside changes in meta and points values. And we'll go ahead and dive straight into this and take a look at aggressive tactics. Now, this is an upgrade that is going to allow you to give a surge token to up to 4 friendly units that have face-up order tokens. It is worth noting, however, that you must be the active commander in order to do this. So if another hero is playing a command card, you will not be able to make use of aggressive tactics. And when this card first hit the scene in the release of the Clone Wars faction core set, it was a 10-point upgrade and absolutely would have made S tier. However, it has since received a nerf in the form of cost increase, which makes it one of the most expensive universal upgrades in the game, coming in at a cost of 15 points. Which will knock it down to an A tier for me. It's still a very good card, especially in a faction like the droids who have face-up order tokens galore, but it's definitely not without its drawbacks. First of all, your command hand is really going to determine as to whether you can make this card work or not, because if you're not dishing out an average of 2 surge tokens each turn with this, you're probably not getting your points worth. Keep in mind that while surge tokens are useful, they need to be widely and readily available to really become relevant throughout the course of a game. A surge token is of no use if you're not rolling any dice, be it offensive or defensive, and on top of that, you're relying on this to be present every time that surge face does show up, and if you're not consistent in dishing out these surge tokens on the right units, you might miss out on the opportunities where you actually need them. On top of that, it's a card that greatly loses value in lists that include more than one commander, as you will likely be making use of all 3 of their command cards also, meaning this card may not even come into play when those surge tokens would be most valuable. And with those drawbacks in mind, I'm really starting to find fewer and fewer scenarios in which I can slot this card into a list. 15 points is not insignificant. It can buy a whole lot of other upgrades, such as targeting scopes, which may give you better dice results in the long run than a single surge token each turn would. Still, there are many lists where this card just slots in perfectly, most notably list or factions with the coordinate keyword, such as a droid army or an imperial list with shore troopers. Still, I don't think it deserved a 50% points increase. It seems a little harsh and doesn't necessarily degrade from those coordinate lists, but rather just makes it a more unusable card on other lists that simply rely on command cards for those face-up order tokens. And that's really all that keeps it out of the S tier. If we're back down to 10 points again, or perhaps even just 12 points, it would probably earn that slot. But next up, after that, we are going to have our second card, which is Commanding Presence, which will increase your command range from 3 to range 4. And this card will sit comfortably at that middle B tier. It's a very valid command card, and that boost in range is definitely beneficial, regardless of what kind of list you are running. But overall, it is very much an afterthought card, one that you might throw on your commander if you have 5 points left in your list and just don't know where else to put it. And honestly, I do find myself in that situation sometimes. However, more often than not, there is a better way to spend 5 points, especially when you're looking at upgrades on your heroes, who have access to some really nifty and unique upgrades like Seize the Initiative now, which just makes Commanding Presence a very mediocre and situational fallback card. But after Commanding Presence, we are going to have Esteemed Leader, which will give Guardian to every friendly core trooper unit at range 1 of this commander, allowing them to soak wounds off your hero. And at 5 points, this is also going to come in as a very middle-of-the-road B card. Yes, it can be nice on certain commanders with weaker armor saves who you want to keep alive, but dishing wounds onto your troops is a good way to lose board control, which is a pretty major factor that contributes to victory in Star Wars Legion, as this is a very objective-oriented wargame. So dishing wounds off of your hero onto your troops to allow them to plow into the enemy ranks might be nice, but that hero better do a lot of damage, because otherwise the other enemy units that are not engaged are just going to side skirt you and capture whatever objectives are on the field. Also, if your opponent knows you're running this card, he may very well just target your troopers to begin with, ignoring your hero and negating the 5 points you spent on this upgrade. Now, you can use that style of threat diversion to benefit you, but again, at what cost will that come to the rest of your list? So I actually think I'm being a little bit generous putting this in B tier. It might even belong down in C, but there might be some unseen synergies that I'm not aware of, as my experience playing this card is somewhat limited, but every time I have, it has not worked out super well. But after Esteemed Leader, we are going to have Improvised Orders, and this is a 5-point exhaustible card that is going to basically allow you to redraw your order token if it's one that you don't care for. It's also worth noting that this card will automatically recover at the end of your turn, and the exhaust is basically there just to make sure you only do it once per turn, rather than every time you draw an order token. And this card is going to be a D from me. This card is just too random in my opinion to sink points into, and if you're relying on luck to get the face-up order tokens that you need, you have probably misplayed your command cards. Now, I don't absolutely hate this card, it is kind of nifty, but there's just so many other things that I think you could spend your 5 points on that will have a reliable impact on the battlefield that you can not only plan for, but also count on. But perhaps I'm being too harsh. I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments section below. But after that, we will have Inspiring Presence, a newer card coming in at 5 points, and this will allow units at range 1 to 4 to use your courage value when checking whether they are panicked. So basically, Commanding Presence but for your morale instead of your orders. And this card is going to be a C from me, and honestly I think that's being generous. It would perhaps be alongside Commanding Presence if it simply allowed you to use this commander's courage at range 4, but that's not the case. It's only going to allow you to use it when your models are potentially panicking off the battlefield. So the 5 points invested in this card will not come into play when you are facing the much more common occurrence that is suffering from the effects of suppression, and that to me basically renders this card ineffective, as you're basically only getting half the benefits of that courage value boosted up 25%. It's just too incremental. And honestly, the more I talk about it, the more I'm tempted to go back and knock it down to D tier, but I really don't feel like doing all of that editing over again, so I will move along to our next card. And this one is going to be Strict Orders. And essentially, this card will allow a unit with a face-up order token to simply remove one suppression token rather than roll for them, regardless of their range to this commander. And this will also be a C tier card, although I'll say more deservedly so than Inspiring Presence. While Inspiring Presence will help you out when you reach breaking point on a unit, this one is going to prevent you from getting there. And when you have 1 or 2 suppression tokens on a unit, statistically speaking, you are more likely to remove a suppression token using this card's benefits rather than rolling those white dice. But while this is a more reliable way to remove suppression tokens, you're basically paying 5 points for some more reliable math, as you reduce the randomness of those dice rolls during the rally step. And while I am fond of this sort of gimmicky trade-offs, paying points to reduce the randomness of dice, it's just such an insignificant benefit on a command card, especially on something like Suppression, as suppression lists are kind of falling out of meta now, and most factions have way more robust ways to deal with it. But that will bring us to our final command card, which is the newer card known as Vigilance. And at 5 points, this card is going to allow units at range 1 to 2 to hold on to dodge tokens at the end of their turn. And this will be limited to either 2 core trooper units or 1 friendly trooper unit of any type, i.e. commander or operative. And this card does not state that it needs to be dedicated to another friendly unit, which means this card can benefit the person who has it equipped themselves. And that makes this card easily an S tier for me. I was actually pretty shocked when it first came out, as this will more or less guarantee that heroes like Jedi start the turn with a dodge token on them, and that's just absolutely fantastic, especially at 5 points. And honestly, I don't think this card is going to stay at 5 points. I personally believe it's going to jump up to either 8 or even 10 points in the future, as for the time being, it's pretty much an auto-include on any list with a Jedi, and gains even further utility when you consider token sharing capabilities such as the clone faction or the authoritative keyword. So it's just a really damn good card. I don't know what else to say about it. Even if you're not running this alongside a hero like Padme or a Jedi with Deflect, holding on to those hard-earned green tokens at the end of every turn is just a really good way to keep your heroes alive. And that really just makes this command card a phenomenal use of 5 points, which stands out head and shoulders above the other options here. Yes, even aggressive tactics. And with all of our command card upgrades now ranked on this tier list, we're going to see that they're not nearly as impressive as those force upgrades that we recently looked at, and that really is a shame because I wish these cards had more impact on how you built a list and how your army functioned. But for the most part, they just tend to be really subtle and niche buffs, most of which are just points better spent elsewhere. The standouts are, of course, Vigilance and Aggressive Tactics, but I'm still honestly a little bit miffed that they bumped up Aggressive Tactics to 15 points. And honestly, if it weren't for that Vigilance upgrade that recently came out, I would probably be skipping over the command upgrade slot in a lot of my list builds. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is there anything I missed out on? Am I over or undervaluing any of these cards? What do you guys like to run on your commanders? As always, explain the reasoning behind your comments. And if you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and increasing that like button to 15 points. But as always, until next time, take care.